everyone, and welcome back to Ready Moveset Go Episode 5. As usual, I'm your host John from Room 100. Joining me today, we have PK King 544.
Hello.
NantenJex.
Hello.
And our very special guest for this episode, Delzethin.
Much obliged.
Welcome. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Yeah, this is a bit of a different experience for me. I don't get to do these projects very often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen a ton of moveset people working together, at least very frequently, which is why I liked the idea for the show. Basically, just get a couple of us together and talk it out.
I think Dels and I did a video years ago now, I think, on Pokemon. I'm trying to remember what year it was, if you have any recollection.
Oh, it was like 2017, I think.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it wasn't my best work.
It was very early days of the speculation scene. Because, was Ultimate even announced then? Oh, I don't think it was. No, it wasn't. So
there were still rumors of there's rumors that there might be an enhanced port of Smash 4, but
oh yeah,
that was it.
God, it's making me feel old.
So, for those of you who are just watching the show for the first time, basically we get together, we pick a theme or kind of a topic for a character, each make individual movesets, try not to give too much away while in doing so, and basically just go over them, talk about the similarities, the differences, things like that. We've done a Gen 5 Pokemon rep, spear user, a food chef-based character, and last episode was a sports rep. And this episode, as per our lovely guest suggestion, is going to be about magic users. No real guidelines as per usual, just somebody who uses magic in a primary way that kind of defines their character as a magic user. So let's just jump right into it. I know it's almost getting to bedtime for Nanten over here, so you get to go first.
Well, I get to go first before all the drowsiness kicks in. Let's go while my mind's still on.
While you're still making sense.
Feel that.
So the character I want to go, this is kind of the only real magic user I really wanted. I've wanted her in for a while now, but I think it's one that most people don't actually think of when you think magic user. I think people think of it more as a puzzle user, and I decided to go with Arle from Puyo Puyo.
Nice.
Originally from a dungeon crawler game called Mado Monogatari, which is a dungeon crawling RPG where Arle is a mage. She is came from a magic school. Magic schools are kind of a main running theme in the Puyo Puyo series. Pretty sure Puyo Puyo 7 and Ringo is literally a magic school is where it's set. So, oh no, actually no, it's the Puyo Puyo Fever series is set in a magic school. Puyo Puyo 7 is set in a regular school, but magic's there. I don't know. But Arle is one of those characters that I've been super keen on wanting to get into Smash, and she's known for using magic. Her main sort of attacks from the Puyo Puyo series are Fireball, Ice Storm, Mind Blast, Judgment, all these big magic attacks that sort of get bigger and bigger as as you get the chains and the stacks. And so I wanted to try and get something like that into Smash, but I know doing a puzzle moveset is quite difficult, so I thought about this more on a chaining magic basis. And I can't take 100% original credit for this. This was sort of inspired by some work I was doing with someone from the Source Gaming Discord named Ozzy, who we were talking about Puyo Puyo characters and throwing ideas around a while back. And this sort of came from it. But the basic idea behind Arle's moveset, her central gimmick, is that she'd have a number of gorges above her portrait based around connecting attacks. So some of her standard attacks would be a fireball, some would be ice-based, some would be thunder-based, and some would be more explosive-based. And if you connect those attacks, you build up a little Puyo Puyo gorge. And when it gets to max, your next attack of that element would be the stronger version of it. So say you do fire, and if you hit fire 4 consecutive times in a row, your next one will be fireball.
Ooh.
As that one. So these are all sort of done with the standard attacks, whereas the special attacks are more the first one is the Puyo Puyo, the actual Puyo itself. I will chuck one of either the red, blue, yellow, or purple Puyo at opponents. It can either stick to them because they're slime, or it will just hit the floor. And if she hits that colour with the specific magic attack, so say she hits a red Puyo with the fireball, it will cause an even bigger blast. It will do more damage.
Nice.
So that's kind of what her core gimmick is. The way these meters work is what you can do is chain stuff. So if you could build up 4 magic, I think in the games this is known as Diacute. I think it is. It effectively increases the power of any spell used after it. But if we take it with the Puyo chaining mechanics, then say you got a 4 meter for fire and then a 4 meter for thunder, that will like double up basically. So your next fire or next thunder attack will take it from both of them and be even stronger. And it kind of builds it upon that. So you ideally want to be building up. You want to be using unique moves to build up all 4 meters so that you can then pull off some sort of really powerful attack to follow up on. But of course, if you miss your attacks and stuff, nothing will happen, and potentially there are some buffers you can put there, not buffers, limiters you can put on this, like if you don't do it fast enough the chain starts to slowly go down, or if you mess it up somehow then you don't get it, or obviously if you have it 4 and then you use a fire attack and miss, I mean that's it, you've lost your one chance. And then some of the other specials are a bit more standard. Arle can technically do a move which is called Warp, so that's an easier recovery move, where she just teleports. She has a move called, I believe it's called Mind Blast, where it's like confuses opponents. It can work a bit like Mewtwo's Disabled, and that would be a pretty easy side special. And then for the down special, she has a various options. She can have a counter called Revia, but that's not very interesting. There's also a spell that sort of does something really random, but like, again, do we want to do that? Alternatively, there's also Garbage Puyo, which can just act a bit like Kirby's Stone, but it goes in front of Arle. Like Arle summons a Garbage Puyo that just drops down, and that could work. It's very simple. So the specials are a bit more standard than the central gimmick that's built more around which magic you want to use and how you want to chain them up. And then for the final smash, it's called Bayon, which is like her ultimate move from all the series, where it's kind of like it's a bit hard to visualize in a fighting game thing. I want to say it's like PK Starstorm, but it's all Puyos and stuff flying down instead of being meteors. And yeah, that's what I do. She'd also have Carbuncle for some physical attacks, where she'd like swing, the two would swing around and stuff like this. These attacks don't change much, but used for stuff like jabs and dashes and all nonsense like that. But yeah, that's what Arle is one of my most wanted characters for the series, and she is a mage, so it fit the theme in.
I always find that there's problems making up be unique, kind of like you said. It always comes down to like, is there a warp or something? It's like, oh well, teleport recovery, or just like sometimes you have to kind of just like, and they do their move, but it kind of goes up. It's hard to make it really unique.
There was one move that she has its name is escaping me, which basically allows you to warp 4 Puyos of the same color somewhere else. So I was thinking something like that, because I haven't actually used the green Puyo in this, just to keep it simple, because I thought 5 might be too much. But maybe her up B could be something where like she throws 4 green Puyos down, or throws 4 green Puyos somewhere up, and then warps to their location. Something like that. Alternatively, she does have light magic, where it causes her to sort of be lifted upwards, or be shot upwards. So that could kind of work. Something like Lucario's, but goes in a straight line or something, I don't know. There are options for it, but Warp was the easiest to explain. And I'm worried it's already a bit complicated with all the special moves and building up gorges and stuff like that.
Yeah. So you said the magic moves are, because the specials are kind of, it seems like their own things. Like neutral special is very important. Is the magic? You said the magic is kind of spread out throughout the moveset.
So
different.
There'd be like. Smash attacks would be like, you could have like fireball, up smash could be more like lightning. It's based around fire, ice, thunder, and explosion is more of a mainstay for her. She does get wind and stone in some games, but I did consider using wind, but I decided not to and just went with explosion for it. Okay. But they would be, I think you'd have to very clearly mark which moves do what, and they'd have to be evenly spread for it to work. But I think a good way of spreading it could be like forward tilt, up tilt, down tilt, and is there a back tilt? I know there's a back aerial.
There
There's
can be.
There's no back tilt normally, but I suppose if you needed to, you could incorporate it as a signature mechanic, kind of like how Terry has a back special.
Yeah,
exactly.
Could do something like that, or you could make it the dash attack or something. Either way, there's four aerials plus a neutral. So you could, if the neutral is her spinning with carbuncle and it's not magic based, then the other four can be, depending on direction. Like fire can always be forward, electric can always be up, down can always be explosion, and back/dash can be thunder. Like there are ways to sort of lay it out so that it's more well known in the player's head. Alternatively, you could cut it in half and just have it be fire and ice or something, because those are the two main ones for her. But I feel like that's too simple then.
Like I suppose it's like you also want to balance it around how easy you want to make it possible for her to set up her magic combos. So like if you only have 2 spells, then you only have to worry about having 2 types of Puyo lying around.
Yeah,
and that makes it really easy to set those combos up, and you'd have to balance around that. If you make them too strong and too easy to set up, then you run the risk of the character being overpowered. But if you have too many spells and it's too hard to get those groups of Puyo set up together, or too hard to get a chain going, then it's going to be notably difficult to set that up. And I guess it depends on how dynamic and how much and how important you want the mechanic to be, how crucial you want it to be toward her damage output, toward her KO power, toward other aspects like that.
Yeah, and I think that is a key thing. I think in order to sort of balance the strength thing, because it goes up, you're chaining them up. It's her regular standards have to be pretty weak. Like her default magic attacks have to be pretty low tier, so that the highest tier ones, once you've got that 4 chain, aren't ridiculously powerful, doing like 50% damage from like one attack sort of thing. But I think that's something that it's something hard to say without actually having tested it. 4 or 3 seem like a good number for Puyos. 2 might be too much. 5 is definitely 2 might be too little, but 5 is definitely too much. And I don't think she has enough moves to have 5 for standards.
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 would probably be the best balance.
Yeah, Explosion's very easy to drop. Explosion can also just be smash attack exclusive sort of thing. I feel like it seems very similar to Fire, but this is kind of what I was just going on to have 4 for each direction.
Explosion as a smash kind of, I feel like, would make sense, because assuming that it's the most powerful of the 4 just kind of on its own, like even when they're all weakest, it's the most powerful. Smash attacks are generally harder to hit than other things, so I feel like trying to chain that into something like really good makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have a ton of like questions or comments, because it just makes sense. It's an interesting take on a Magic user, because I feel like a lot of Magic is kind of based around like knowing when to use certain things and which is best in given scenarios, which kind of fits perfectly into the puzzle idea as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to try and make sure there was something that could fit into a puzzle, or at least the chaining mechanics of Puyo, because that's kind of what Puyo was based around. It was meant to be a fighting puzzle game, and so chaining is like pulling off combos. So I wanted to try and get that somehow represented in a way that works in Smash.
I'm happy you picked this character, because when the Switch first came out, this was like all the rave that anyone was talking about, and they're like, oh, she should be in Smash, and I'm like, okay, she's gonna throw blobs at you, like what? You know. But I'm happy to now be educated, because this character seems really cool. So. Yeah,
that was another reason I wanted to pick it. Everyone always assumes she's a puzzle rep, and she is technically, but Puyo is also technically a spin-off. It's a situation where it's like Persona, where Persona was a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei. Puyo is a spin-off of Mado Monogatari, but everyone knows the spin-off. Doesn't know the origin.
This spin-off ended up overshadowing the original.
Yeah.
Though it's kind of funny, because actually my only direct experience with the Puyo series is when it was rebranded back in the 90s as Kirby's Avalanche.
Oh yeah.
And
Dr. Robotnik's Moonbeam Machine.
I actually played a lot out of that and got pretty good, but I'm only used to the mechanics and the kind of the whole the versus puzzle system, and how you try to how the best way to defeat your opponent is by chaining multiple clears of blobs together, because that creates more and more garbage Puyo to send down their way that they have to deal with. So I'm familiar with the mechanics, but I wasn't as familiar with the original series that it's from, and I didn't realize it was as heavy on magic as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprisingly it's got a lot of magic themes. It's also surprisingly dark. The original like Mano Monogatari is at least the first two do not shy away from just being really dark for some reason.
So what are we talking like Kirby Final Boss dark?
What the bad ending of the first game? Bear in mind she's like 5 years old in the first game, and then she's 16
Whoa.
from the rest of the series on. Like she's like doing her magic kindergarten trial in the first game. But like the idea is that she has to clear, and if she leaves the dungeon, she fails the exam. But the bad ending has the last boss show basically, oh, while you're here, we're currently at the kindergarten killing all the children, and starts getting flashes of this, and that causes Arle to leave to go save her friends, but it turns out to be a trick, and she fails.
Oh,
God.
It's like what the heck is this? What Jesus compiled?
Some relaxed puzzle game fun.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, there's probably a reason Sega doesn't reference the original series very much. But that's mine. That was mine.
Yeah, nice, quick and
Lovely.
easy, and a very good moveset. I suppose we'll hop on over to Del now, if you would like to show us yours.
All right. So when it comes to magic in the context of video games, and especially RPGs, there is something that is particularly iconic. There is an archetype, a character class, if you will, that this type of magic is just associated with, and many magic users and RPGs and other genres like that are based on it, and that is the Black Mage from Final Fantasy. And while we do have a Final Fantasy character already, and that makes it kind of, I don't know how likely it would be to get the Black Mage now, especially since Square Enix isn't exactly lacking for viable characters right now for Volume 2 of the Fighter's Pass. I can think of two in particular who have a very, very high amount of support still, and I figure there's a pretty good chance we'll get one of said two before this pass is done, and I won't go into detail on them because there's a chance that our other two members here might bring up one or both of them. But I think the Black Mage has a very distinct flair to it and can delve further into the concept of using magic in the context of a fighting game than we've seen Smash do so far, though that's not saying much since Smash hasn't really had very many magic users so far, and it's kind of it's a niche that's sorely untapped into. You get the idea. Yeah. So for basic appearance, a Black Mage could. There are two different directions it could go in. You could go with the more kind of the more chibi style that Vivi used in Final Fantasy IX, which I think could be fair game now that Final Fantasy IX is on a Nintendo system, and if you haven't played it, you should. Or they could go with kind of a lankier and a little more sinister looking design that's used in a couple of the Mario Sports spin-offs, the Mario Hoops and Mario Sports Mix, which were developed by Square Enix, and so there were a few Final Fantasy characters that cameoed in it. Either one would work, and it's just more kind of down to personal taste and which Square Enix approved of more, I suppose. And so the general gist in the Black Mage is, aside from the typical magic trappings, walks around, carries a staff that he uses to cast spells. He'd actually share the mechanic of a mana meter with Hero, but it would be implemented a little differently than Hero did, in that it wouldn't just be the specials that use the mana meter. There would be certain attacks like smash attacks, aerials. I swear I'm not just riffing this off of Robin, I promise. That under normal circumstances, the Black Mage would kind of infuse these staff swings with magic and use them to cast spells. And for many of his A-button moves, you could base the animations off all the different incarnations of the Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder series of spells throughout the history of Final Fantasy, though, with a special emphasis on the first 9 games. So, for example, his up air could be based on the Fire spell, specifically from Final Fantasy IV, where it's like this spiraling pillar of flame, like he'd kind of raise a staff upward, and it would come out from the tip of the staff and go upward. And his down smash can be based on the Blizzara, or however you pronounce it, spell from Final Fantasy IX, which creates this cluster of ice crystals on the spot, basically. And so many of the A moves would use this as inspiration. And so you'd have all the 3 main magic elements in video games present through that way. But then his specials are where things would get a little more interesting, because that's where you can tap into the lesser utilized elements and stuff that are also a staple of Final Fantasy. So my idea for his neutral special is based on the classic powerful black magic spell, Flare. And it would be a chargeable spell with several levels of charge, and each level of charge would give it the appearance of one of the versions of Flare as depicted in various early Final Fantasy games. And you see, the brilliant part of this is the whole idea of multiple levels of this type of spell, multiple levels of specifically Flare, was a thing that was done in Final Fantasy II, like the actual 2 on the NES, not like a rebranded Final Fantasy IV. And so each of the 4 levels of Flare would become increasingly flashier and more powerful, and even the basic level would be notably strong for an uncharged spell. But not only would it use more mana than your typical neutral special would, or than what you'd expect it to use, it would also take a notably long time to charge between each level of Flare. Like, I'm talking like anywhere from like 2 to 3 seconds for each level. And if you don't charge all the way to a certain level of Flare, it would go back down to the previous level, kind of like when Robin's charging through various thunder spells, or when Pac-Man's cycling through his bonus fruit. And so there would be this element of needing to find the right opportunities to back up and charge to the level of Flare you want, to have it in your back pocket to let loose when the time is right. Then Black Mage's side special could be Bio, the poisonous spell originating in, I believe, Final Fantasy IV, though Final Fantasy II had a different poison spell called Scourge, but we're not going to use that. And Bio would create this area of poison immediately forward. I'm not sure exactly what the hitboxes would look like yet. Maybe like a fan shape or something. And not only would it deal damage, it would poison the opponent, which would deal additional damage over time. And of course, the key to this would be to kind of make it feel different enough from Joker's Aha, different enough from Piranha Plant's Poison Breath, to feel distinct while also being the particularly iconic spell that it is. Then Black Mage's up special, this would be very easy to just use Warp or Teleport here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use Gravity, which is a spell from, I believe that one also started in Final Fantasy IV, which is a set damage attack that laps off approximately half the enemy's health, and naturally doesn't work on most bosses. But the way it would work is actually a little closer to Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, where it's used to kind of to force movement and pull enemies down out of the air. And so, for the spell, there are actually a couple different interpretations of it that I'm not sure which would work better. It would involve basically creating a gravity well and using it to propel himself upward and in a direction, whether that would be kind of creating it below him and then launching upward, kind of like Hero's Whoosh spells or Robin's Elwind, or whether he would surround himself in the gravity well and use it to kind of float a certain distance, or combine them and start it with being in the gravity well and then pushing himself out of it. It would depend on what would be better for overall balance and what would click best with his moveset. You could also put a spike on it at some point, but you'd have to be careful, because I don't want it to be something you just kind of run off and spam. So you'd have to be careful about that. But you may be thinking, wait a minute, so you got all these different attacks that use various magic spells, but how do you keep your mana up? You see, because unlike Hero, Black Mage would not gain mana back from inflicting hits on opponents. He would regenerate it over time, and it'd be a little faster than with Hero. I'd imagine like 2 mana per second maybe instead of just 1. But your main way of regaining mana to keep it topped off and keep it so your attacks are always available would be through his down special, Osmos.
Okay.
If those of you who are familiar with Final Fantasy, as you know, it's a special spell that drains mana from the target and gives it to you.
Okay.
And so what I'm picturing is it'd be kind of like a passive buff that you need to sit back and apply, and then once it's up for the next several seconds, however many, 10 or 12 or whatever, any opponent you get close enough to, you just start leeching mana away from them passively and replenish your mana gauge that way.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's distinct, it's original, and it feels true to the source material to an extent.
Yeah, it fits with the offensive nature of black magic.
Right. And then finally, for the final smash, can't go wrong with the ultimate black magic spell, Ultima.
Yeah.
Yay.
Taking its appearance primarily from Final Fantasy VI with a little bit of details from future games, Black Mage would kind of do some kind of special looking incantation, slam his staff straight down on the spot, and this tremendous outwardly reaching explosion of bright blue mana would erupt from the staff, cover a massive area of the stage, catch anyone in it, keep them pulled into it, and then it would basically explode outward at the end, dealing tremendous knockback and netting some pretty early KOs, as you'd imagine.
Yeah, nice.
So overall, I'm imagining a playstyle, unlike what you'd expect, the stuff I've explained here wouldn't actually lean very well toward a zoner playstyle, or at least not your typical sit back and chuck projectiles kind. The nature of how the spells appear and how many of them are tied to his A attacks, I could actually see him being more of a disjoint zoner, actually, having more in common with characters like Byleth or Corrin than other projectile users. So fighting as a black mage would be more about sitting at mid-range and using your superior reach and the basically disjointed radius of your A button spells and your other stuff, knowing when to let loose of the flare, knowing when to use bio to poison your opponent and rack up damage, knowing when to take an opportunity to apply osmos and then use that to pull mana away from your opponent while you're kiting them, and use that to outspace your opponent and overpower them that way. And since most of his spells actually would not have the properties of projectiles, so they'd be kind of like Hero's side special, Hero's Zap series, to where they look like projectiles, but they actually function just like big disjoints, so they can't be reflected or absorbed or stuff. Most of Black Mage's attacks would be like that. Most of his A button attacks, that is, his B button moves, like particularly Flare, would still you'd still technically be able to reflect it, but since it wouldn't actually be moving, reflecting it wouldn't actually turn the tables and send it back toward him. It would just protect you from the damage.
Okay.
But it would create this very different and distinct style of magic user compared to, say, Robin, to Hero, to the other more projectile zoner-ish takes on the concept of being a mage in Smash than we've seen so far. And also very different from how Super Smash Flash 2 handled a Black Mage moveset, and I don't entirely agree with how that was handled. Feels a little too scattershot.
Fair.
And too reliant on kind of representing as many spells as possible, and I want to have something that feels a little more, I don't know,
compact,
clean and coherent. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just my style of moveset. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good representative of Magic and JRPGs, really. I think like the Black Mage is kind of like the iconic mage character. the original JRPG one, the one that has the iconic design that everyone thinks about when they think Magic. So I think having it as a choice for a Magic user specifically makes a lot of sense in the moveset. I feel like incorporates everything from that. It has all of the spells you would expect to see from a Black Mage, or utilised pretty well. What I'm wondering is, which design are we going for here with the Black Mage? Are we doing the original Final Fantasy 1 small one? Are we going for something like Vivi from Final Fantasy 9? Are we getting that really cool Mario Hoops 3-on-3 Black Mage, the really lean anime looking one?
Yeah, that's the question. It would come down to a matter of stylisticness, I suppose. Though I'd imagine if you pull the Final Fantasy fandom, they'd probably want it to just be Vivi.
Yeah. I mean, not being in the fandom and not knowing much about it. I mean, that's like I looked up Black Mage Final Fantasy just to refresh my memory. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, of course. Like it like Nanten said, it's just the video game Magic user.
Yeah,
it's just so iconic. I was surprised there hasn't even been like some kind of Mii costume or any, like, it's so crazy iconic that it's surprising that it's not in Smash in some way.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, though, chalk that up to how oddly sparse the additional content from Square Enix is, I suppose.
Yeah,
of course.
Especially from Final Fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, all my experience with Black Mage has been Smash Flash, so, I mean, from there I was like, oh, he's cool, like, Mage, love that, but I like the cohesiveness of your moveset a little bit better, and I feel like Sakurai would like staying with the original design, like he's done with most of the characters, but looking up the Vivi one you guys are talking about, I do like this one, because it stays with the chibi look without it being too, like being too anime, but it's not as simple as, like, just a blue cloak, so yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also like the cohesiveness. I definitely prefer that kind of moveset to something where you have to keep like five different gimmicks, or just like 5 different things in mind, as opposed to just like keep certain parts simple, like maybe make things a tiny less bit directly from the game in favor of just making it flow more as a moveset as a whole, which I definitely liked from yours as well.
Yeah, and that's the key with these types of character concepts. There's a balance that you got to strike. You want it to be as true to the source material as you can, but you also want to create a cohesive moveset, and you want it to feel distinct to play as. You want the character to feel like something that you can't get from anyone else, and something that makes people want to play as them.
Yeah.
And so you got to gauge where to directly pull from the source material and where to take some creative liberties.
Exactly.
Yeah, other than that, I like it. I don't have a ton to say about it. They're just so far two very solid movesets. Anyone else, especially anyone who knows Final Fantasy better, want to add anything else?
I quite like Gravity as the up special. Like I quite like the way Gravity was used.
I do as well. Like I said earlier, I'm happy that there was a more unique, interesting way to recover and just use up B in general. I suppose we'll move on to PK.
Okay. Where do I start? Oh, this page is a mess. Okay, so there's a game that I was gonna do a video on this a while ago, and then I just didn't because other stuff came up, whatever. But it's called Mages of Mistralia. It's a smaller game, but it came out May 18th, 2017, and just fun fact, May 18th is my birthday, so I was like, oh, I kind of have to do this, like this game came out on my birthday. But
I'm May 13th, so we're real close.
Lovely.
I'm way off in December.
That's my sister's birthday. Okay, well, lovely. Well, moving on from that. But this character, obviously, mage, it's in the title. Her name's Zia. I think it's Zia, Zia. I'm assuming Zia. I played the whole game, and I didn't even remember that was her name. But basically, how the game works, the whole thing about the game is that you can make your own spells, which I know already sounds like a nightmare for a moveset, but hear me out. In the game, you can unlock different things, like how long a spell takes, the different element it uses, the direction it goes, and stuff like that. And you can make up to 4 different kinds of spells. And I wanted to somehow reasonably represent all of that without literally being able to make your own moves, because that's not happening. So what I kind of came up with is, and if I'm going to break it down, you have 4 different elements: Aurora, Igni, Aqua, and Gaia, I think that's how you say it. But it's basically electricity, fire, ice, and earth. And your neutral B would be to select which one of those you want to kind of have active at the moment, kind of like Shulk's Minato. This wouldn't change the moves that much, it wouldn't change the hitboxes or anything, but it would kind of do small stuff. The general rule that I've built up is rock would give you more defense, or it would just have more defense. Ice would give you more range. Fire would give you more damage, and electricity or wind, it's kind of swishy-swashy, would be more speed. And that would mainly affect the specials, but it would also kind of affect the regular moves. And then that goes in the different types of moves. So in the game, there's 4 different types. There's Amidi, which is close range moves, which she'd probably use for all her moves besides her special, just tilts and stuff like that. And then there's Actus, which is for the side B. Those are just projectiles. Look, I'm not good with words. That's the up B. That's the up B, and it kind of makes it makes physical things happen. I'll explain that in a sec. And then down B affects yourself, so it would be like shield or buffs to yourself. So the way I kind of incorporated that was each of the specials would change slightly depending on which element you currently have. For example, the side B, which is a projectile, if you have the rock, you just kind of throw rock forward. If you have ice, you throw ice forward. If you have the wind one, you put a little tornado forward. Fire is a fireball. It would still have the same hitboxes, and it would visually not look that different. But like I said, the rock one would just would maybe give you super armor. The ice one would go further and have more range. The electric one would be faster, and the fire one would do more damage. That's just the theme with all the specials. The down B is kind of, how do I explain this? You kind of make a path forward. It's in the game. This is a really like integral part where, like, let's say you cover the lake with ice so you can walk on it. It's kind of like that. You just make a path in front of you. And obviously, like, the rock one would stay longer. The ice one, it would be really weak, but it would be like really, really fast going out. No, not really fast. I'm mixing it up. It would go further. That's it. And then the tornado one would give you speed, or would just go really fast. And the fire one would do more damage again. And for the up B, I want to say this is unique, but I did just steal this from Rivals, so it's not super unique. Obviously, I'm playing a lot of Rivals of Aether recently, and one of the characters, Craig, his up B kind of just builds a platform all the way up to him like that. Yeah, so that's literally just her up B. But for the rock one, it's strong and it takes longer to break. For the ice one, it's weaker, but it goes higher, or just like, I guess it would bring you up even more than where you are. The wind one would go faster, like instantaneously, and the fire one would be like imagine like a little lava rock kind of thing, and it would do a little bit of damage for just being on it. Maybe not to you, just to your opponent. And that's the general flow of the moves. You'd want to like kind of balance between, okay, like it's kind of just Shulk but magic more. Do you want to do more damage? Do you want to have more speed? Do you need more range? And that would also maybe at least aesthetically affect like the tilts and the aerials and stuff like that. She has a bunch of different wands. She only needs one of them, so just pick the one that is most iconic. Use that one to swing around, hit people. And that's the gist of it. Yeah. I mean, the MIDI type spells do have like some special effects. Like there's a little zappy one that has a bit of range, but for the most part, the main thing is with her specials.
Cool, I dig it. I do love the I've used that kind of like having one of the specials change properties throughout the moveset and stuff in a couple movesets. I think you've used it a couple times, maybe, but I do love that general concept, and I think this was a great place to do it in a way that still made sense in a moveset, but was able to like incorporate all these different kind of powers.
Yeah, like I there is definitely an appeal to the whole customization aspect of it. Like, this is only tangentially related, but I was a big fan of in Bravely Second, the first magic using class you unlock is the Wizard class, which has an ability called Spellcraft that basically lets you combine a base element with an effect. Like you'll have one that just kind of does a weak AOE, or one that does a more dedicated strike toward one enemy, or one that hits 4 random targets. And then you can eventually gain the ability to take the Spellcraft trait and apply that to the spells of other classes. And so, like, you can, for example, you can have a healing spell that hits 4 random allies, if that is something you wanted, or something. I promise it's much more versatile than that. It's actually really cool. So I really get the appeal to kind of being able to customize your magic mid-move set. However, you'd also need to be very, very careful about balancing it, because, like, just from my competitive experience, the way the metagame tends to work with these kinds of things is people will find out the small selection of stuff that is most optimal and will stick to that. And so there needs to be something to encourage players to keep tinkering with their spell sets and keep customizing mid-match to get the desired effect, so they aren't just sticking to a small selection of spells. Like you mentioned Shulk with his Monado Arts, and the reason Shulk is so successful in how his Monado Arts function is because they're all temporary. They last a short amount of time, and then they have a cooldown afterwards, which encourages Shulk players to kind of cycle between his various arts and take advantage of them when they can. And of course, that's not something that can be viably applied here, since you can't just have these spell customizations work temporarily, or the moveset starts having issues.
If anything, if you use the same element too much, it could, like, maybe I didn't really want another like mana meter anywhere, but if you use the same element too much, you run out of that element for a little bit, something like that, to help balance it out. But I totally get how people would just find the optimal one for each of the elements and only use that, and then it'd get pretty boring. So
I think it could be probably pretty easily remedied, I think. As long as I think maybe the longer that the magic is out or the more that it's used, the weaker it gets.
Okay.
So it won't ever fully stop, but if you're just using fire because of the damage all the time, then it's eventually going to get to a state where it's optimal to switch to something else.
Yeah.
It just won't be doing the additional damage that you want. And then the more time that it's cooling down, it will slowly get back up to that starting level.
Of course, you need to be careful about that too, because the last time they implemented that was with the stamina system with Pokemon Trainer and Brawl. That didn't go over too well.
Yikes, yeah, no thanks. I mean, maybe it could be something small. I feel like a lot of us are going to be ripping off Robin because that's the only really character we have to like anchor right now. But how Robin, the different books that you have out, there's a little meter at the bottom that shows how much life that book has left. So maybe like while you have the fire out, it shows the fire meter just so there's not too many icons down there.
So basically show how much power that element currently has, basically?
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah, something like that makes sense. Quick side note, I was like, yeah, what magic really is in Smash right now? And Robin's the main one. I mean, Hero has spells.
Yeah, Hero is the one
like
it's basically like them and Zelda are the only unambiguous examples. Like you could make an argument for Ness, Lucas, and Rosalina maybe, but they're kind of ambiguous.
Yeah, I think Ness and Lucas probably count. It's just a different sort of magic. Rosalina, I'm not sure I'd count as a magic user, but that's just me. Zelda's like the original, which I suppose makes a lot of sense. But then
for sure.
Robin is the most standout one.
Yeah. So.
I like it. I'm glad you went with another another indie game. You usually bring some pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
I'm gonna say you were saying to me at the beginning that I'm going with all these out. I go with these out of their picks, and then you go for this game I've never heard of before in my life.
But yeah, I mean, looking up the character, I could see them very easily in the Smash style for sure.
Yeah.
Good moveset.
Cool.
Guess it's just you now left. Room.
So I'm actually kind of surprised, but very happy that my first pick was not mentioned. So there's a lot of focus on like more magic characters. My first thought was I really want to go a direction of magic that hasn't really been done, and it's definitely one of my favorite options for a moveset, which is the more like trickery, a lot of like illusion and just kind of weirdness to it. So what I eventually settled on was a character who I was like, after looking through all the options, I was kind of surprised that there hasn't been more talk of this character in Smash, and that is Kamek from the Mario series.
Oh.
So, I mean, I was looking at Kamek. My other two options were Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat and Big Hat Logan from Dark Souls. But so this was the one I ultimately settled on, and I think he has some really cool stuff. His base appearance would be, he's pretty small, but he's riding on the broomstick. So he would be kind of floating very, very close to the stage. It wouldn't be weird with hitboxes in any way. Moves would function basically the same. It would just be kind of gently floating around. Probably feeling a little bit like Ness or Mewtwo in the way they kind of float around with their jumps, things like that. A lot of his moves, a lot of his normals would be based around that classic magic blast that he does with the three shapes, the square, the triangle, and the circle. It'd be like short little rapid hits, build up some damage, nothing too big. Going into the smash attacks is where we see some of his boss battle moves come into play. Forward smash would be a big fire blast that kind of goes forward a little bit, like Mega Man's F smash. Up smash would be a magical burst arc with three different magic projectiles kind of spreading out from the start and just creating a little bit of an arc. Not a ton of range, but it would basically go and then disappear. And then the down smash would be spawning two blocks on either side of them and then slamming them down. Going into the specials is where that actual element of randomness and trickery really comes into play, which is why I really wanted to focus on him. So neutral B, I don't have a strong name for it. I guess it would be called animate. Basically, he would fire he would fire that magical blast with the shapes. If it lands without hitting another character or another player, it will spawn a random item or one of a few real low level Mario mobs. Like maybe a Goomba will start walking around, maybe a Koopa will start walking around. But if it does hit somebody, keeping with the randomness, there's a couple things it might do. It might have a bunch of knockback without a lot of damage. It might have a fire effect for a little bit. It might freeze them, stun them, something like that. It wouldn't be a very powerful move, but again, the randomness is kind of just what makes it something to be afraid of. And it would never, because it's not that strong, it wouldn't backfire in the way that other magical things like Hocus Pocus can.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Side B is Transmogrify. Basically, what would happen with that is instead of firing a blast, he will kind of hold a magical aura out in front of him, and whoever is caught in that aura will suffer again. Hopefully no one hates the randomness that can happen in Smash, but they'll suffer a random effect. They'll either shrink, they'll get ultra heavy, their controls will reverse, they'll be more prone to tripping, things like that.
Okay, like that.
Up B, very simple. Teleport, puff of smoke, go across the stage. Nothing too fancy. Down B is probably my favorite and probably the one that would be least likely to work. But it's a concept that I came up with a while ago in a different moveset that I just love, which is Copycat. In so many comic boss fights, he summons clones of himself, and you have to kind of find the real one. The way that I implemented this in Smash is that you hold down B and you can basically charge up the move. It takes a little bit. But you can spawn up to 2 duplicates of yourself. So the way that this works is they die in one hit, they can't do any damage. But while those guys are on stage, they basically function kind of like the normal CPU programming would. And it basically just buys you a little bit of confusion in trying to disappear for a second, maybe disengage, get out of a situation, and then kind of get a sneak attack, an opportune strike on your opponent.
Nice. Okay.
And then the final smash is called Dry Bone Army. I think basically you would get sent to a cutscene, you'd get dropped into a middle of a battlefield, and then a giant Kamek would point his staff forward, and just a huge horde of dry bones would come and wreck shop.
Nice.
So that's the basic concept. I'm sure if Kamek was actually to get into the game, it'd be a lot more reserved. I probably, maybe one of the crazy things in my specials, like the random blast or the copycat, maybe one of those would be the focus of the moveset. But I tried to put his most powerful and unique magic in the specials, and mostly left other iconic but more standard moves to things like smash attacks.
Okay, lovely.
So, yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned how off the wall some of that stuff is, because, oh man, the competitive community would not like a couple of those specials. Oh, yeah. If they think command selection is bad on Hero, oh my god, Transmogrify.
Yeah.
So Transmogrify just does a random effect if it hits. Like, is it anything from like sleep to confusion, mushroom, fire? Like, what's the what? How random are we
Everything.
talking about?
You would definitely. Well, and I think so. One way to take away some of this and tune it down a little bit is neutral special. I think if it hits an opponent, it does a little bit of damage, and that's it. And that way, the main randomness of that is what it's going to spawn in. Mm-hmm. And I think that would help.
I like that idea. I do think that's another thing I was going to bring up. I was worried that the neutral special didn't have enough actual counterplay to it. If it hits, it does one of several potentially dangerous effects. If it doesn't hit and touches a stage surface, it still works. I think making it so like making it so the Kamek player has to deliberately aim it away from people, and making it so, if it hits someone, all you get is a little bit of damage, or if it shields, it doesn't accomplish anything. I feel that adds the right kind of counterplay to them.
I think that's, to change up what I just said. I like you said, I think just having it so that if it hits or gets shielded, nothing fancy happens. The idea is, because my idea for Kamek is that he's not very strong. Like, he would definitely have to rely on, spawning things on stage and using his copycats to take a hit or two. I think that kind of stuff would be very important to his success. So yeah, I think neutral special would be all about the item or the mob spawning. Side B would be about the actual affecting of the player, and that way it can be a lot shorter range. So it's not like a projectile, like a constant threat. It's basically like, just know if you come in for this kill. I don't know. Definitely not, not any kind of effect that's been in Smash. Maybe 5 different things, like the shrink, super heavy, frozen. Let's see what else is there. More tripping, and maybe something else.
Reverse controls or something like that.
Yeah, reverse controls. Reverse controls is a good one.
Yeah, I think toning it down and then adding some kind of visual effect to make it very clear which status ailment is affecting in the moment would help keep it more
like the ones that go on their head,
tune.
like how you got flower where it slowly does the damage, or mushroom where you go backwards control sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so continue, please. I'm extremely open to the criticism because I know how bonkers this moveset can be.
That's why we're here.
What was the up special again? Sorry, I think
up special is teleport.
Oh, it's teleport.
That's why there's a reason you forgot about it.
Yeah, teleports in a puff of smoke.
No, like because I always think with Kamek, he should use his broom in some way. The magic broom that he's well known for riding. And like, I was surprised to see it not show up as like the up special, even though I know he can warp. Yeah.
Well, that's why. I figure he'll just be riding the broom basically always.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So it like that will be his base appearance, but that's kind of just the way he'll get around. He'll be very floaty with kind of like big kind of weird jumps like Ness or Mewtwo. He could maybe have a like a hover ball like Peach maybe. But what was it?
Oh gosh. The down B though, the duplication thingy, I think that's really cool, and y'all probably hate me for bringing this up every single time, but in Rivals of Aether, yeah, exactly, Forestburn can duplicate himself, and in that game it works pretty well. I haven't seen too many complaints about it, and it's not, obviously the duplicate isn't like OP. It's pretty easy to tell. You hit them once, they disappear. And that character can also make different puffs of smoke everywhere, so it's a lot harder to manage. I feel like in Smash it'd be a lot easier to tell, and because the stages are kind of bigger, by the time they get to you, it's pretty obvious which one's the real one and how to work around it. I guess it's more to buy yourself time so you could create things and stuff like that too, so it works, but I like that.
Yeah, I do like how duplicate in your concept is kind of tailor-made to be a tool for misdirection. How the clones can't actually damage opponents, so you can't overwhelm them with hitboxes. They disappear in one hit, so there's once you hit them, that's that. So you don't have to worry about the Kamek player constantly spawning duplicates and constantly overwhelming people with stuff. Yeah, like it feels like it was thought out, and it's like there's a clear cut purpose to it.
Yeah, I had actually used that concept for Loki from Marvel in like a move, like 10 characters from Marvel moveset that I did, and that's just like that was my favorite part of it for sure. I think it would be super unique, and yeah, like you said, I tried to make it reasonable enough that you're not spawning too many, so the game doesn't crash, while also still being useful.
8-player Smash. Oh god.
Chaos. 8 Kameks all duplicate.
One thing I am a little disappointed in, I'm disappointed that the final Smash isn't a reference to the boss fights in Yoshi's Island where he takes a regular enemy and makes it giant.
Yeah, that's what I thought the boss would be, even if it was like Baby Bowser. Like he flies around and makes Baby Bowser giants and just almost like a carbon copy of Bowser's Final Smash, to be honest, but actually referencing.
yeah, that would be a good one too. I haven't played a ton of the games that, I mean, he's in a ton of games, but I haven't played like the majority of them. So in looking for a Final Smash, that was something that came up a couple times and was like specially mentioned in the wiki as well. That I was like, that could be a pretty good one. But yeah, something like a giant Baby Bowser would make a ton of sense as well. Yeah, so that's the moveset, and that is all of our movesets. So good job, everyone.
Interesting bunch overall.
Yeah. We got some unknown ones. We got some very common ones. We got some iconic ones.
Yeah.
Very balanced.
Yeah. So I guess then it's before wrapping up. Is there any honourable mentions? Does anyone have any other ones? I'll be honest, I didn't actually think. I kind of knew straight away I was going to go with Arle, so I didn't actually think of many others. So outside of like another Fire Emblem character or Toon Zelda.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple I kind of want to get out of the way just so the comments don't yell at us. Very obviously, Gino. I love Gino. I want Gino.
I never really think of
yeah.
Gino as a mage, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he kind of threads the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, close enough to where I'm just gonna say it anyway, just to make sure.
Yeah, Gino being one of the aforementioned Square Enix characters with a lot of support that I think has a legitimate chance.
Yeah.
Please. Anyway, I also was close to doing Nanten because I don't think the chances are super high, but you already have Ness and Lucas, like, finish the trio, that'd be cool. And there are two more that I was thinking. There's Wizards of Legend. That's another indie game that's probably a bit more popular.
I've played that.
I don't really know much about it, but that's just one of the first things that popped in my head, so I wrote it down, but I didn't really touch it after that. And then lastly, there's a game called Spellbreak that I've been kind of into. It's a battle royale, but for mages. Instead of finding guns on the floor, you find like different gauntlets that have different elements on it. I don't know how a battle royale character would necessarily work, but and if there was going to be a battle royale character, it would not be this game because it's still in beta. But I don't know. That's just something I wanted to say real quick.
So, as far as honorable mentions go, I think we should mention a couple particular assist trophies because the characters do have quite a bit of support. First of them being Isaac from Golden Sun. Yeah, and he's had a support base since Brawl. It was a pretty notable support base in Smash 4. There are a lot of people disappointed when it turned out he was an assist trophy right at the end for Ultimate, to the point where apparently, I don't quote me on this, but apparently Nintendo of America was actually surprised by how much support there still was.
Oh.
And I think what with our first known character for Volume 2, the Fighter's Pass, being from ARMS, and with a plausible possibility of Springman being involved, despite already being an assist trophy, maybe that opens things up for Isaac again. And being a Venus adept, which essentially by Golden Sun standards that makes him an Earthbender. He has all these different Earth-based magic to pull from, and that's just going from his base element. He could technically use the other three as well. He could use various water, fire, and wind spells as well if they wanted to really get into detail on it. Though I think it'd probably be better if they stick to the various aspects of the Venus element in Golden Sun, because there's so much you can work with there.
I suppose I never really think of Isaac as a mage, because it's like he's the JRPG protagonist, isn't he? So it's kind of like, is Chrono a mage because he can use lightning magic technically, but I never really think of him.
It's a hybrid of sorts. Like Isaac is both a sword fighter and a magic user, like Robin and Hero are.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
And so the other honorable mention I want to bring up is Crystal from Star Fox, which would be a bit tougher of a sell since Star Fox as a series hasn't really been in the best straits as of late.
Even regardless, that Crystal as a character hasn't been in Star Fox since the DS games.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's basically since, with the series going on hiatus for a while, and the only games we've had since are a remake of Star Fox 64 and a game that might as well have been a remake of Star Fox 64, both of which take place before she entered the picture in the series. However, a lack of relevance didn't stop King K. Rool from getting in, so I gotta think, maybe there's an outside chance, and we know that apparently, at least according to Sakurai, she was considered for Brawl. And the main reason she ended up getting turned down and Wolf was chosen instead was because he was easier to make at the time.
Yeah.
And so I gotta think, if she's on the Smash team's radars, maybe, who knows, right? I mean, it doesn't hurt that, like, her biggest upside is her moveset potential, not only being technically a magic user via using the staff in Star Fox Adventures, which is canonically hers, but also being able to pull in some more sci-fi elements from places like Star Fox Assault. Being essentially this like Magitech character in a way, which is something that literally no other character we've seen in Smash yet, and basically no other character I can think of off the top of my head could viably do in Smash. And I think that's something worth acknowledging.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, those are two characters. I mean, all the characters said so far I could absolutely see those
Yeah.
options. Like I said, my main alternative was Shang Tsung for Mortal Kombat. I think Mortal Kombat and Smash, while being a tricky subject, would still be really, really cool. And while people usually would go for, Scorpion or Sub-Zero, the main antagonist of the series, I think, would be really cool as well. He has a ton of really cool deception-based magic. He can turn into other people, which could be used either as like a Kirby mechanic or as a way to bring in other Mortal Kombat representation. He can swap places with other people. He has a lot of really, really cool concepts that, like other fighting game characters, you would kind of just have to pick and choose how you would use them in the Smash format.
Yeah, my backup character actually was this one was going to be a bit more obscure, but mostly just to kind of show how the game's mechanics could be interesting in the context of Smash. My backup was Cyrus from Octopath Traveler.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like the kind of the general gist of his moveset on top of the usual, fights with a staff, focuses on elemental magic, the fire, ice, lightning trio, since that's what his default scholar class does. He'd have a couple mechanics, one being the boost points from Octopath Traveler, where he'd gain a stack of boost points after however much time. And you would be able to infuse his specials with those to strengthen them. And the other mechanic would be, his down special, Analyze, where it's used in Octopath Traveler proper to scan an enemy and reveal all of its weak points, reveal like what elements or weapon types it's weak to. What it would do in Smash is it would identify an enemy close enough nearby and quote discover a weakness they have for a specific element. And so for the next however much time, any of Cyrus's attacks that of that element that hit that enemy would be stronger.
Okay.
And if you use multiple boost points, you would actually uncover weaknesses to more than one element. So use all three, and suddenly your opponent would find themselves weak to fire, ice, and lightning. For its logic still applies, how the hell is Charizard suddenly weak to fire? But that was my backup plan. I couldn't come up with as full a moveset as I did with Black Mage, so that was why I chose what I did.
Fair enough.
That's so cool, and though it almost reminds me a little bit of the Arle moveset of just like needing to focus on certain elements at a given time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. And we get that music, so.
Oh, yes. I have feelings about how little Square Enix music we've gotten despite two characters from them.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, at least on the top of my head, the only other thing that would kind of be a stretch would be a Pokemon. Technically, does that count as mage?
Depends, I guess.
Braixen?
Depends
Yes.
Yeah.
I was actually a big Delphox supporter back for Smash 4 DLC, and I still think it'd be, if you squint a little, you could work as a Zelda Echo, but it would be a bit of a stretch, especially since we've seen no sign that we're going to get any more Echo fighters here, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But honestly, if we get a Pokemon newcomer, it's probably going to be from Gen 8, and there aren't any real characters who really stick out as pure magic users from the generation that I can think of that would have a strong chance of being chosen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to any fans of I don't want to name names. I don't want to name names. I don't want to exclude people. I don't want to be that guy.
Alright, good. But I mean, that's pretty much it for me.
Yep,
I think.
I'm ready to get some sleep now.
Yeah. Let's wrap
we can
it
talk
up.
about this all day.
All right.
So first and foremost, thank you again, Delzethin, for hopping on this episode. It's been a pleasure having you.
This was fun. Quick plug, I actually finished a recent video about where I tried to predict which characters we might see for the rest of Fighters Pass Volume 2, or at least which characters I think are worth keeping an eye on, because it's really hard to predict exactly who we'll get. I just finished a video talking about which first-party characters I think are worth keeping an eye on. If you're interested in that, check the video out. I don't exactly trust the YouTube algorithms to show it to people right now, so I figure why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nanten PK, you want to talk about what you guys are doing right now?
Working on a billion things while trying to survive, as it always is for me. No, I've got some stuff done. I know people have been asking where this research is that we did, and it's still on its way. There were like 4,000 of you lot who just sent in all of your requests, 6 characters each, and all stuff. It's taking time. It's taking time to look at, and I know there are just some impatient people out there who keep sending me messages being like, "Is it done yet?" And it's like, it'll be done when it gets done. All right, calm down, calm yourselves. But yeah, that's my focus.
I guess for me, words. Smash Bros. I draw. I do all the little icons you see here, and I'm working on a lot of rival stuff right now. I'm making an OC, so you can check out that series and help me build that up. Yeah. Games.
and yeah, I'm here, so please feel free to check out my other stuff. The other episodes of Ready Moveset Go. Usually Pizza Dude is on here, so he's done a couple really cool episodes. We had Brawl Fan on for an episode. As for me personally, some music will hopefully be coming soon. I just finished some acoustic demos, and I just put out a moveset for Master Chief as well. So all that stuff here that you can check out. Follow me on Twitter, Room100ENT. I think it's time to say goodbye and good night to Nanten.
Night.
Almost like Butts Bite.
Night, everybody.
All right. All right. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Until next time.
Bye.